passing our function down to the answer buttons works. As a next step, I want to make sure that we show some meaningful text here instead of always answer one. And as a little stylistic thing, I want to adjust the text color. We can do this by setting the text color argument on the raised button. And there we can set this to colors.white. Again, colors is this utility class which groups a bunch of predefined color codes, so to say, and I assign this color code to text color, which will unsurprisingly color this text white. But now let's make sure we have different texts here which we pass down. And for that, our question here now has to become a bit more complex, because now a question should not just be a string, the question itself, it should also contain information about the available answers. Now, of course, as long as our question is just a string, we can't put any additional info in there other, than the question text. So what we need now in here is a more complex object which can group multiple pieces of information together. The text for the question, but also the texts for the answers. And what could we use for that? We could create a new class which has all these features we need and use that class to create objects here. And that would be a perfectly viable way of managing this. Would be perfectly fine. However, since you're also taking this course to learn a little bit about Dart, I'll actually show you a different data structure that's also built into Dart, which can also be useful if you have relatively trivial data structures which yet are more complex than just some text. And that would be a map. You create a map with curly braces or by using the map class like this. But let's use the curly brace syntax. So it's a little bit like a list which you create with square brackets, but a map now is not a list of values, but instead a collection of key value pairs. You have a key to identify a value. For example, here you could have the question text key and you put the key between quotes, double or single quotes, doesn't matter, just be consistent. And then the value is assigned by adding a colon after the key. And then you have your, value. In this case, it's also a string, but your value could be anything. Could be a number, could be another map, could be a list. Really, any value can be used in here. The key also doesn't have to be a string. You could also have a number as a key, like 1, but often you will have strings because then you have a very human-readable way of accessing the different pieces of information in that map. So now one question here in our list of questions is no longer a string, but instead a map. And that map right now has a question text. But now it shouldn't just have a question text, it should also have a list of answers. And therefore I'll add a comma to add another key value pair to this map. And I'll name this key now answers. These key names, of course, are totally up to you. And now answers won't be a string, but instead a list. As I mentioned, your values in the map can be anything. In this list, I now want to have a list of, answer texts which we can display. And here we could have, since I'm asking for the favorite color, we could have, let's say, black. We also could have red, green, and white here. You could add more, but I want to have 4 answers, let's say. And with that, if we now reformat this, we have this map with a question text and with an answer in here. Now, of course, I want to have more than one question in the quiz, so I will duplicate this and also add my second question here as a question text in the second map here. Remove that double quote at the end and at the beginning. And here my answer texts could be, since I'm asking for animals, here I could be asking for rabbit, snake, elephant, and let's say a lion. And let's add one more question here by copying and pasting in this map one more time. And here I'll ask for, who is your favorite instructor? And I want to offer a couple of totally objective choices here, because that could be Max, 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 or Max. Okay, of course, enter whatever you want here. So these are my 3 questions. And now we're using a map here, which just like everything else, every other value, it's of course based on an object. It's based on the map class, which is built into Dart. So map is a class built into Dart. This is just a shorthand way of creating it, just as you have square brackets for lists. And it's perfect if you have more complex data, which you want to manage as key value pairs, like we have it here, where you could create your own class and your own object. But if it is just such a simple collection of key value pairs, creating a custom class and object might be overkill, though you absolutely could do it, of course, but it might be overkill, and therefore creating such a little map here on the fly kind of can be very nice and helpful.